Welcome back to Goan Law for the Layman. In the last video, we discussed the concept of annulments in the state of Goa, and we also discussed that annulments and divorces are two separate concepts. Annulment is the cancellation of the marriage on the ground that there was a defect in the marriage at the time of its registration, whereas a divorce is the dissolution of a marriage by a court of law, which is done on a ground which has arisen subsequent to the marriage. So, in today's video, we'll be discussing what are divorces and on what grounds divorces are granted in the state of Goa. So, let's dive in. So, divorce is the dissolution of a marriage which is done by a court of law. And this dissolution can be done in two ways. One is a mutual consent divorce, and the other one is a contested divorce. A mutual consent divorce is where both the spouses come before the court and jointly make a statement that they do not wish to carry on with the marriage, in which case the court will grant the divorce after following a certain procedure. The other one is a contested divorce where one of the spouses wants divorce whereas the other spouse wants to reconcile. In such a case, the party who wants the divorce will be allowed to prove the grounds for divorce, and after conducting a trial, the court will proceed to grant or reject the petition for divorce. Now, in case of mutual consent divorce, parties can apply for this only if they have completed a minimum of 5 years of marriage and also if they have completed 25 years of age. Both these conditions are mandatory. Unless they are complied with, the parties will not be able to apply for mutual consent divorce. Now, in a petition for mutual consent for divorce, both the parties will be signing the petition supported by documents such as the marriage certificate, the birth certificate of both the spouses, prenuptial agreement if any, and one statement with regard to the custody and maintenance of the children if any. And if the parties own properties, then the spouse will also have to make a declaration of those properties. Now, once the parties file this petition, the court will call both the parties before it and attempt to reconcile the parties. That is, the court will try to convince the parties not to go ahead with the divorce, and if they still insist on going ahead with the divorce, then the court will make a record of this statement that the parties insist on getting a divorce, and the court will pass what is called as an order of provisional divorce. A provisional divorce is a temporary divorce which is granted by the court for a period of 1 year, and in this 1 year the parties are basically given the opportunity to reconcile. Now, the only effect of this provisional divorce is that the parties will not be legally obligated to stay with each other, but it also does not partition the properties of the spouses. Everything else remains the same for the period of 1 year. At the end of this 1 year period, the parties will be called before the court once again, and the court will check for the very final time whether parties want to reconcile. And if the parties insist that they don't want to go ahead with the marriage, then the court will pass a final decree of divorce. Now, as opposed to this mutual consent divorce, we have on the other hand what is called as a contested divorce. Contested divorce is one wherein one of the spouses wants a divorce and the other one is opposing the divorce. That is why it is called as a contested divorce. So, in a contested divorce, one of the spouses can ask the court to dissolve the marriage only on one of these 8 grounds which are permitted under the law. The first ground is adultery. Adultery means that this spouse who is seeking the divorce has to necessarily prove that the other spouse has had sexual intercourse outside of the marriage. If this is proved, then the divorce can be granted. The second ground is ill treatment or serious injuries. So, if the spouse who files the petition proves that the other spouse has seriously injured the spouse, or that he has ill treated the other spouse, he or she has ill treated the other spouse, this is also a ground for divorce. Third ground is if the other spouse has permanently left the matrimonial home for a period of 3 years. This is a ground for divorce. Ground number 4 is if the other spouse has been unheard of for a period of 4 years, then this is also a ground for divorce. The fifth ground for divorce is if one of the spouses has been declared by a court of law as being of unsound mind, then after a period of 3 years from this declaration, the other spouse is entitled to get a divorce on this ground alone. The sixth ground is if both the spouses have consensually separated for a period of 10 years, and after the completion of this 10 years, either of the two spouses can simply go to the court and ask for a divorce on this ground alone. Seventh is that if one of the spouses is a habitual gambler, if he has a chronic vice of gambling, then this is also a special ground of divorce under the Goan law. And finally, if either of the spouses has a contagious and incurable disease, then the other spouse can ask for a divorce on this ground. So once a divorce is granted by a court of law, the party who has obtained this divorce has to wait for a period of 90 days, which is the appeal period given to the other side to file an appeal. If no appeal is filed or if the divorce has become final, then this divorce order has to be published in the official gazette. And after this is published, then the publication and the certified copy of the judgment has to be tendered to the civil registrar, who will endorse in the marriage register that the marriage has been dissolved. So that was all about divorces in the state of Goa. If you have any queries, you post them in the comment section below and I'll try to make a Q&A video covering as many as I can. But that was about Goan law. What about the latest legal updates? Do you want to know what the Supreme Court said or what the High Court said, or what is the meaning of the latest law passed by the government which affects you? What is the effect of moratoriums granted on loans? Can tenants be evicted during the pandemic? All such legal updates will be covered in my next series, that is Legal Talk for the Layman. So as always, subscribe to the channel to stay in the loop. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.